I think it would be good to go over some of the language you're going to hear during this video. We say things like CA, PATE, tag, boy, camper, adult, and I think it's good for us to just cover what we mean when we're talking about all of those different types of people that are at camp. So, for example, a tag. A tag is a tag along. We use tag for short. The tag alongs are the young children of volunteers who are on site at the time. Kids who are potty trained all the way up to the age of 5 can be in our tag-alongs unit and hang out at camp all week, all day, and they have a great time. When we talk about boys, we have a similar unit of the boys of volunteers who are on site at the time, and they get the camp experience all day, all week as well. So that's our boys unit. Now, when we say campers, we technically mean every kiddo who is at camp from first grade through PATES, which we will cover in a minute, plus boys and tag-alongs. Those are all of our campers because those are all of our kiddos who are on site who are not leading. When we say something like CA, we mean camper aide. That is the same thing as a teen leader, I say sometimes. Those are the kids that are running camp. They are technically not campers, but they are still kiddos under the age of 18. So since they are running camp and they are doing the responsible thing of helping us run this girl-led camp, we give them a special name because it is hard work. CA, camper aide, are the bosses, really, the backbone of camp. After CAs, another word you might hear us use is PATE. And PATE, P-A-I-T, stands for our 7th grade and above kiddos who have not been trained to be a CA yet, but they are in the process of learning how to lead at camp. And at the end of the camp week, we welcome them into the fold, into the group of CAs, and then they can lead next year. The only other group we haven't really talked about is adults. Adults is pretty self-explanatory. It's anybody who is 18 years and older. That sometimes does include kiddos who just finished high school and were in a Girl Scout troop up until they finished high school. But once they turn 18, they can be considered an adult for ratio purposes. But a lot of times they still want to be in with the CAs because those are their people. That's the part that they love coming. They love coming to lead. And so we usually will let them lead the year after they graduate high school, sometimes even the year after when they turn 19, maybe their first year after college, because they have some very specific knowledge, or maybe they have something really exciting that they want to share at camp. And so we count them in with the CAs, even though they count as part of the adult ratio that we need. If you've spent any time doing Girl Scout stuff with your camper, you know that Girl Scouts is very concerned and protective of their kiddos, and they make sure that everybody who is involved sticks to certain ratios. The ratios have to do with the adults to kids. Usually it's 2 unrelated adults to a certain number of kids, depending on age, and we are held to that at camp too. The way we do that is by having an adult in each unit, but also a bunch of adults up at headquarters. Those headquarters people are the quote, second adult for us to maintain ratio. The problem comes up during camp when we leave the field because headquarters is in the field and that's where those adults are. So if you are a unit adult, there will be times when you need to come up to headquarters to ask for a second adult to accompany you. Things like hikes through the forest, even if you're just going on an Elfinora hike to go look for toys, back and forth to cook shed and archery, which are outside the field boundaries, are times when you're going to need a second adult with you. It is the unit adult's responsibility to come up to headquarters and ask someone to come with you, and a second adult will come to cook shed to escort you back at the end of your cook shed day as well. So what do adult volunteers do at camp? There's a lot of things that we ask our adult volunteers to do, but basically they are there as support. They are there to support the CAs, they are there to support the campers. We have some legal things that the adults need to do, like checking in and out and making sure that the kids are where they're supposed to be, But basically, you are there to support our CAs as they run camp. Remember, Girl Scouts is supposed to be girl-led. So you can see on this list a couple of the things. We have you responsible for check-in and check-out of the campers. You know, you get to see each of their adults' faces and get to know them. We ask you to watch over the unit bin and just make sure you know where it is at all times. It should travel with you wherever you go on at camp. Hopefully you have a watch of some kind or a phone that you can check the time just to keep the timing and everything going. And then help with bathroom breaks and CA breaks, because the CAs do get to take breaks just like you do. So make sure that they have a chance to step away, and we'll talk more about that later. We ask that the adults also remind the campers and the CAs about things like reapplying sunscreen and bug repellent, making sure they are using their cooling techniques like getting their bandanas wet and putting them on their heads or on the back of their neck, putting ice in their water, drinking water if it gets too hot. Those are the kinds of things that we expect the adults to really remind the kids about, because most of the unit adults are parents and they're watching out for that anyway. And the CAs may not have that on the forefront of their brain. They're thinking what they need to teach and how to keep the kids engaged and how to keep them interested, not necessarily if they're in the process of getting a sunburn or bites from mosquitoes, or if they're too hot, maybe. Okay, we're going to talk about some general things about camp that not everybody may know. Now, camp is its own unique culture. It has its own traditions and everything. So we wanted to just cover some of those things. One of the things is camp names. Adults and CAs have camp names. All of the campers, boys, and tag-alongs go by their given names, but the adults and CAs have the special privilege of having a camp name. We are not to use or show or reveal the CAs or adults' camp names until the last day. It's kind of a big thing. It's very cool that the kids get to learn their CAs and their adults' given names. Another thing to think about is how we keep track of where everybody is on site, that the t-shirts are color-coded so you know who's associated with camp and who's not. Let's talk quickly about dress code. Dress code is the same for everyone. Closed-toed shoes or camp t-shirt and shorts or leggings that go to about the knee. We don't want short shorts. We don't want any kind of exposure of the midriff. And we are also very careful about modifications to the t-shirts until after camp. So if you wanted to cut the neck off or something like that, for example, remember that all of us will be wearing matching camp t-shirts. The back will match, but the colors will be different. So our tags and boys have a very specific bright color so we can keep track of them. We have our campers all in the same color, and that is first grade through Pates. Pates have the same color as the campers. And then our CAs have their own special color, and the adults also have their own special color. So you should be able to look across the field and know who is who and where they are at all times, just based on their t-shirts. But another thing that we do is we try to keep track of where each unit is, especially. And for that reason, we have the grade levels color-coded. So for example, it goes Roy G. Biv, so first grade is red. And we may have more than one first grade unit. So we have a 1A, a 1B, a 1C, and we give each of those units their own flag with their unit number, and the flag is the color of that grade level. So that way we can keep track of where are our first graders and which unit is where. So the flag and the unit boxes, which we'll talk about in a minute, are supposed to travel with the unit so we know where they are at any one time. Yes, we can check the schedule and we have all the schedules up at headquarters, but if you just want to do a quick look to see where 5B is because they're supposed to be at Rainbow Tent or something and they're missing, you can look for the purple 5B flag and you can find them and run over there real quick and tell them where they need to be. So we try to keep track of where all of our CAs and adults are at all times. So we have a sign in and sign out whiteboard at headquarters. We ask the CAs and the adults to sign in and tell us their location every time they move. So if they're going to go to cook shed, if they're going to go to archery, if you guys are going to take a hike, you need to go up to headquarters and let someone know. So that way we know where you are at all times. One other thing that we like to emphasize is that cell phones at camp are a special thing that are only supposed to be used for emergencies and checking the time. It's so easy for both our campers and our CAs and our adults to be looking at their phones, but we're here at camp to have the camp experience and we don't want to miss any of that. And remind your CAs gently that phones should be away unless we are communicating with headquarters or checking the time. Also in that unit bin, you will find a handbook. A handbook is just basically all the same materials that are in the unit binder in a smaller, more easily transportable little package. It has all the same info. It's just not in beautiful plastic sheets and et cetera, et cetera. We started the handbook this year because it can get frustrating only having one place to look for information. And so we thought we have two people leading this group. We have the CA who's the primary lead and the adults that's their backup. But it's nice to be able to have a second place to look for something if the unit binder is being used at the time. Maybe they're checking the schedule or whatever. This handbook is basically like a mini copy, and it also has a plastic sleeve in the front that you can put the schedule in, so that way the kids can just pick it up and look at it really quick without having to rifle through the big binder to find it or asking the CA or asking the unit adult. It's just right there. It's really visual and it's protected because it's in that plastic sleeve in the front of the handbook. The handbooks, of course, are color-coded because we color-code everything. So the red ones for first grade will be red in your unit bin. Okay, just a top-down view of our main camp and all the parts and pieces that we're going to talk about. So the first thing we're going to show you, of course, is going to be our main campsite. We're over here at the river shelter, and most of our camping stuff is going to happen over here. We have our location for our bus lane, which is going to be right here where these cars are parked. Normally we have this all blocked off so that nobody can park here. We have our parent parking, this is our pick up and drop off parents that come and drop off their kids in the morning and pick them up in the afternoon. We want them to park in this location. Now our volunteers are going to park in this parking lot and we ask them to back in. It just makes for a quicker and easier exit. Cookshed is all the way over here at the forest shelter, and in order to get there we have a path that meanders through the forest and takes us there. If you take this path, you are supposed to have a second adult anytime you leave main camp, remember, so you should take a second adult with you to get to Cookshed. Another thing we need to show you is our archery spot, and archery is all of our targets are lined up here. This is our main campsite at the river shelter. Remember that headquarters is going to be right here. This is where all the action happens. If you have any questions or problems or anything, just come up and talk to us, no problem. We have leather. It's under these trees. It's lovely. We have our rainbow skills out here under some pop-up tents to keep us in the shade. Rainbow skills, of course, is our outdoor skills. We have song, skits, and games over here under this shady tree. Thing we're going to talk about in just a little bit, which is our Elfinora mailbox. She lives in the tallest tree in the forest, and there is a lovely mailbox to drop notes and letters over there by the porta potties on the edge of camp. And then remember that back this way is going to be our bathroom, our porta potties. We are also able to use the city park restrooms that are at the top of the hill. We usually reserve those restrooms for adults or older campers, and they must travel there in a truddy. In Girl Scouts, you'll hear a lot about how kiddos need to move with a buddy. They always need to be with a buddy. At camp, we are even more careful because we ask the kids to always travel in a truddy. A truddy is three. A three-person group or a truddy can be a CA and two campers. It can be two CAs and a camper. And it can be three campers as long as they remain in the fields. They may not go up to the upper bathrooms without a CA or an adult, but as long as those three campers can be seen by their unit adult, so say a group of kiddos wants to go to take-alongs and pick up some more straw weaving, and they say, oh, my friend blah, 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 and my other friend blah, blah, blah want to come with me, and that unit adult or that CA can say yes, if they can see them across the field, as long as they are in eyesight and they are not going to cross a boundary, then that group of 3 campers can travel together. Now, I know that a lot of times the first graders or second graders, you may not want to give them this freedom, maybe until they've earned it, maybe later in the week, et cetera, et cetera. That's up to you and your CA to figure out, for you guys to decide. I would maybe just mention it to them when you get a chance. How do you feel in this first grade unit about 3 first graders going over to take-alongs by themselves? Are you okay with that, or would you want to go with them? That's a conversation to have. But we always travel in treadies. Adults, of course, have to stay with the group, but CAs can count as one part of a treadie. Now you'll notice this yellow line, of course, we've talked about the boundary before, but this also shows you how anybody who's not associated with camp can access the rest of the trails and stuff. And this road is the access point for people not associated with camp. So if anybody ever comes up to camp and like, how am I supposed to get to the river or whatever, you just ask them very politely to walk along that road. And we do have the entire field and the shelter rented, so it is supposed to be private while we are there from 9 to 3 every day. If you ever have any problems or anything with people coming up or people outside of camp not in the special t-shirts, please come and tell headquarters and we will take care of it. Emergency procedures are in place for all kinds of different things. That includes fire, flood, volcano eruption, all kinds of things. They all start the same way, which is us evacuating the field into the parking lot. You will hear an emergency signal, which is 3 blasts, a pause, 3 blasts, and a pause on the air horn. And it is able to be heard at Cookshed on the other side, so they also know to evacuate. Cookshed has their own parking lot, and they do the exact same thing we do at main camp, which is the unit CA and the unit adult will calmly and quickly evacuate the kiddos up to the parking lot, have them stand in a line. You have your unit binder with you because it always travels with you, and your unit binder has a red side and a green side with cards. And if you have all of your people in your unit, including your unit CA and your unit adult volunteer, you hold up your green card, and then someone from headquarters will come by and they will say, all right, and we just kind of have you sit down and wait. Now, if we do have to completely evacuate the site and not come back, we have a path that we take in evacuation directions for going up to the Wilsonville Public Library parking lot. And we basically just walk the road, and we would have adults in front and adults behind from headquarters, clearing the way and making sure nobody gets left behind. So there's procedures for all of that. And we walk up the road, we walk up the hill, and then we cross the street, and we end up at the library. And we are designated to have the upper parking lot so that we can have an in and an out route for pickup of kids, and the buses as well, because the buses would come and make sure that we have all of our kids properly checked out by their camper release or released to the bus, and then the adults pick them up at their bus stop. But it is in place and ready to go. And if you'd like to learn more about it, you can look at all these things, all these procedures in your unit binder. Now, of course, because we have the possibility of things like an injured camper or a lost camper, we have procedures for that. If you have a lost camper, you immediately leave an adult with the unit. You contact headquarters and let us know, and we immediately start a search party. But we have to make sure that the unit is safe and looked after by an adult. And our headquarters staff and a lot of our CAs know this, have been through this, have run through these many, many times, and will know exactly what to do. So we also, in case of fire, we have fire extinguishers on all sites. Move everyone away, check in to make sure we have everyone we need, make sure no one's injured, hurt, or lost, and then we move on to dealing with the situation. If you have any questions or anything about any of our emergency procedures, please contact Camp WLL Director at gmail.com, or you may, of course, talk to any of us at headquarters at any time and ask questions and how it's going to work. A quick rundown of some of the stuff that happens day to day during camp. One of the things that we do is we talk about what next year's going to be. So we have on the very first day, the kids think about what next year's theme will be, and we have them turn their ideas in by 3 p.m. The next day, we vote on them, so that we can announce them at the end of the day. Day 3, once we have the theme for the next year, we have papers in your unit binders. Actually, that's like a big circle, and the kids can draw whatever they think fits the theme inside there and turn those in. And we let them do that overnight in case they don't get enough time during the day to do that. We would like the designs turned in before the end of the camp day on Thursday. Campers and pates are the only ones who can turn in designs. CAs and adults are not allowed to turn in a design. We would like the design to be made by one of our campers. And then the very last day of camp, we have voted and we make the announcement and we make a big deal. We've had a lot of fun themes through the years. There's a list in your unit binder if the kids are struggling so they can see some stuff that has been chosen in years past. The next thing that we do day to day is knots of the day. This looks really complicated. This is just to show you that each unit level has its own knots. This is tags, our little ones, and first grade as appropriate. So they're learning to do the very basic things like lark's head, which is making a loop, and they'll practice that when they put their colored yarn through their wood cookie necklace. So then let's skip to 4th and 5th grade. The very first day we're going to review lark's head and bow knot and overhand double overhand. Now, overhand double overhand is something they should have learned in previous years. So it's cumulative. Over the week, they should learn all of the different types of knots in their knot of the day guide, which is in your unit binder. I have reminded the CAs about the knots of the day. It does tend to get lost, but we are a rainbow skills camp. Rainbow skills include outdoor skills, and that includes knots and lashing. So by the time our campers get up into 6th grade and pates, you can see how much we've already learned and should be reviewing even day 1. So lark's head, overhand, double overhand, and square knot should be first day review. It should be something that they can remember pretty quickly, figure out pretty quickly, so that they can move on and learn the new knots, which will be day 2, 3, and 4. And by the time that these campers are pates, even the quote new knots on day 2 and 3, they should have done years past at least once or twice. They will also be using knots in different aspects of camp. You'll notice that some of the take-alongs that we have integrate common knots like square knots, overhand, even lark's head in some instances at cook shed, and knots are integrated into rainbow tent as well. So we will be doing things like building emergency shelters with knots and lashing. So it is something that we want to integrate into their daily practice. There will be a packet, a little baggie of ropes, and usually one is tipped in blue and one is tipped in red, and the kids can use those two to follow along, and they practice their knots a couple times, and then they're done for the day. And then the next day we introduce the new one. They can look at the instructions. They can try to do it with a partner. Your CA could try to do a guided practice. However you guys want to do it for maybe 10 minutes of the day. Let them move back to GIMP or to something else, because we don't want them at the end of the week to be really frustrated with it. If they do get frustrated, let them come back to it. Try it again the next day. We're not there to frustrate them. It's supposed to be something to celebrate and something that they will notice in other activities throughout the day, that they are using it and that they see the practicality of how these knots can be useful in their everyday lives. Let's talk rosters and check-in and check-out. I'm going to walk through the roster, and then we'll walk through check-in and we'll walk through checkout. So first things first, this is a roster for one of the units. Most of our adult volunteers will be helping out in a unit, and they will be assisting the CAs with check-in and check-out. Now technically the adults are the ones that are supposed to be taking attendance. Even though Camp Wil-LO-Linn is girl-led, the adults are the ones, of course, that are making sure all of the procedures and everything are followed, as well as state, federal, Girl Scout guidelines. And that includes knowing where our kiddos are at all times. So this roster you will find for each unit inside their unit binder, inside their unit box. There will be quite a few copies of it, enough for morning and afternoon attendance records. And it looks like we have our unit CA here and our unit leader. So this is where you would find that information. The roster itself has quite a few things that we need to pay attention to, besides the last name and first name, which will also list you and your CA, by the way, so you might not want to show this to the kids. It's kind of a tradition to keep our first names secret until the last day. But one of the things I wanted to talk about was this first aid check-in. Some of our kiddos are going to need to check in at first aid tent when they first get to camp. We have a couple of kiddos who have asthma or need an EpiPen or need to make sure we know where their inhalers are or whatever. So once they are checked in by their adult, they need to just stop by first aid, and first aid will give them a piece of red tape, and that red tape will go wherever their medically necessary device is. And once they have checked in with first aid, they can go on to singing tree. The next thing we should talk about on here is our bus kiddos and our children of volunteers, and that's also going to be listed on your roster. Any kiddo that comes by bus is going to just come and go to singing tree. Now they're welcome to stop by unit check-in to drop off their backpack, but they're going to go to singing tree because they're already going to have been checked in at the bus. The bus liaison has checked and all the things that I'm going to ask you to do when we talk about check-in process. So the other one is our children of volunteers. Most likely the children of volunteers will check in a little bit early to you, and the adult volunteer will come over, sign their kid in, and then go off to do whatever job they need to do. So be prepared for those kiddos. Once they're checked in by their adult volunteer, they can also go to singing tree. Singing tree is kind of our little buffer activity in the morning and in the afternoon so that we can do all these necessary things like attendance. So how does check-in work? Well, let's pretend it's day 2 of camp. We are going to get out our roster. We are going to put the date on it. And this is going to be our morning roster. So I'm going to fill this puppy out as my kiddos check in. Now, I already said we're not going to worry about our bus kiddos. We're not going to worry about our kiddos volunteers until we notice that they haven't checked in. What we're going to do is let's talk about Lena Wild here. So let's pretend that Lena needs to check in the morning, and we're going to look to see who Lena's people are, her emergency contacts, and what we would call a camper release. A camper release is someone who we can release the camper to, and it has been put in the system. Now, there's usually more than 3 camper releases, and we usually only list the first 3, otherwise this roster would get really long really fast. If someone tries to check in a kiddo and you don't see them on there, just bring them and the kiddo up to headquarters. It's very likely that they're 5th or 6th on their list and we just didn't print it all, so we'll double check that for you so you can help out the next kiddo. What you're going to do is Lena's going to come with whomever's checking her in. Let's say it's Dad, and Dad's going to walk down and be next to Lena, and we have a very specific protocol that we want to follow. We address kiddo, and we address kiddo for a very specific reason. One, we are trying to teach our kiddos to take leadership opportunities, but also we don't in any way lead the adult or the kid into a situation where we give away names or identification or anything like that. So we address kiddo and we say, hey, what's your name? And she'll say, Lena Wild. I'm like, hi, Lena, who is this with you? Or, can you introduce me to this person? So we're going to ask Lena to please introduce us, and hopefully Lena will either say their name or their relationship. And so Lena will say, yeah, this is Dad, this is Jake, or whatever. And we're going to look on our list, and hopefully Jake is one of those 3 people on this list. If not, again, send them to headquarters and we'll figure it out. And Jake is going to say, yeah, I'm Jake Wild, and this is my daughter Lena, and she's here for the day. Great, Jake. I see that you're on here. You're listed right here as a camper release. And what I'm going to do is, you see your name right here? I'm going to ask you to initial next to your name, JW. You signed your kid in. At this point, before Mr. Wild leaves, we ask 3 questions, and we observe 3 things about our camper before they are released to the singing tree and before we release Dad. We're going to ask 3 questions. One is about closed-toed shoes. Closed-toed shoes is part of our dress policy or dress code. We have to have closed-toed shoes at all times. No sandals, nothing open toe, nothing open heel. A water bottle that is full. If it's not full, send them to the water bottle filling station, no problem. And we are a nut-free camp that includes almonds, hazelnuts, any of those kinds of things, nut butters, and a lot of times that's going to include granola bars, so we just have to keep an eye out for that. So if you have any people giving you trouble or whatever, or a kiddo forgets or something like that, just send them up to headquarters. We have a bunch of nut-free snacks up there so they can grab them at any time. So once we have verified those 3 questions, you are just going to check off that you talked to kiddo about it and say, yep, I checked, Lena's good to go. We're going to check it off. And then once all your kiddos have checked in, you're going to bring this up to headquarters, and you're going to say either yes, everyone was present, or no, not everyone was present. Once you're done taking attendance on your roster, please make sure at the top left to circle whether or not all of your people are present and accounted for or not. We are legally responsible for any of the kids who are signed up for camp every day. So if they don't come, we need to call. And in order to do that quickly, we can just really quickly look at the top corner of that sheet and see if all your people are in, and then we can move on to the next group. So please make sure to circle yes or no in your roster before you send a truddy of kids up with the roster and turn it in, please, before 9:15, 9:30 at the latest, so we can start making phone calls and figure out who's missing and who we knew would be late or maybe not come that day. We just need to make sure we have all of our ducks in a row. So you bring up your roster and you drop it off and we're good to go. We keep it, we file it. So checkout is a very similar process. In the morning, once the kids are checked in, they go to singing tree and the adult will leave. In the afternoon, the adults will wait, and the procedure is going to be that you dismiss kiddos of volunteers. Say, okay, you're dismissed to singing tree, and then you are going to dismiss your bus kiddos. And you're going to dismiss them to singing tree. So kiddos left with you should be the kiddos that you have to look someone in the eye, have them say their name to you, and have them sign the kiddo out. Those kiddos don't actually get released to singing tree, they get released to their adult. So same procedure, we're going to say, okay, parents, grab your kiddos. There's going to be singing tree going on with the bus kids and the volunteers kids. Everybody else is still going to be in their unit line, and adults come to you. You ask them what's their name or ask their kid to introduce them, and you check to make sure that they are a camper release, and if they are, then they can sign their kiddo out by putting their initial next to their name, and then you say, have a great day, see you tomorrow. When you're done with that, I would ask that you please, again, bring your roster to headquarters so we know who is there and who is not. We will have a CA at Singing Tree who checks out the children of adult volunteers. They'll have a list, and then the bus kiddos, one of the CAs will be the Pied Piper and say, okay, all the Rosemont kids, follow me, and they'll walk those kiddos to the Rosemont bus, and the bus liaison will check them in, and when they get dropped off at the bus stop, the bus liaison will double check that the person picking them up is on their list and will initial, and they'll let me know if they have any problems. If you have any issues or anything, just always come to headquarters. We've used this system for a couple years now. Most of the parents should know how it works. At the end of the day, after the afternoon wrap up, we will have the adult volunteer with the roster walk up the hill to meet the parents. They will be in unit order, and they will check the child out at the top of the hill. One reason we're doing this is because the field at the end of the day gets really, really hot. It's open, we're in the direct sun, and at the top of the hill there's shade. So we're trying to help both the campers and our adult volunteers from things like heat stroke. We've had problems in the past with the kids sitting in the hot sun in the afternoon, so we're trying to alleviate that issue as well. If you haven't noticed already, Girl Scouts introduces badges every year or similar concepts every year and touches on them in a more deep and more complicated way as the kids age up. So you'll see things introduced in first aid as a daisy, and then as they move up through Brownie and Junior, those first aid skills will get more complicated as the kids are able to take on more responsibility. We do the same thing at camp. We are a Rainbow Skills Camp, so all of our skills that we teach will circle or start from the little ones all the way up into the CAs. So we start with things like knots as young as daisies, and then the knots get gradually more complicated so that they can use them in some of our different things when they're older. One thing that you'll notice we do is we do slingshots, archery, and axe throwing at camp. It's the same concept. Slingshots has the same feel and idea behind it. There's a range. There are certain times you can fire at things. There are certain times you can't have your weapon in your hand. That wrap up and circle up as they get older into archery. When they're little and they're shooting dog food, which is what the city approved for us to use in the slingshots, it's not going to have the same impact if it accidentally hits someone or bounces off something as an arrow when it's shot out of a bow and arrow. So we use the opportunity of the kids being younger, kind of circling back to it every year to build that knowledge base and build that sense of responsibility so that they can take on more complicated things when they get older, like axe throwing. But if they have the opportunity to do some of those more difficult things when they're older, they'll have that background and they'll already be trained in those things. Cook Shed is its own special event at camp. Each grade level gets to go to Cook Shed for one day, and you will notice that there are usually quite a few units at Cook Shed at the same time. So you will come to Cook Shed and there may be 40 campers there and the adult volunteers and the CAs. It's a lot of people there at once. We expect adults and unit CAs really to be there to assist, to help. They need to pay attention to instructions and reinforce those instructions. They need to pay attention to safety regulations and really reinforce and be on top of that. This is not a sit back and chill kind of day. You should also be already aware of whatever food allergies, including gluten-free, vegan, vegetarian, dairy, all those kinds of things. Your Cook Shed day is assigned ahead of time, and we will make sure that your families and campers and you are reminded ahead of time not to bring a lunch, because whatever you cook at Cook Shed will be your lunch. Now, it differs from grade level to grade level, but the things that you may eat may be a soup or a salad or sandwiches, but whatever it is, we expect the adult volunteers and the CAs to also eat the food that is prepared. So let's talk about what happens at Cook Shed. Quite often you will leave camp with an extra adult volunteer, of course, walk the forest trail to Cook Shed. You will bring your unit bin, you will bring your unit binder, kids will bring their backpacks, you will bring everything with you to Cook Shed, and you'll find a spot near the forest shelter over in the corner and put all your stuff there. Then you will come and you will listen to the instructions, the safety lecture from our Cook Shed people. Now, Cook Shed is run by an adult volunteer, and that adult volunteer has a food safety background. They also know all the rules and regulations that Girl Scout has for outdoor cooking safety, including hand washing, dishwashing, working with knives, fire, and volunteers. That Cook Shed adult volunteer lead is the boss, but they are also the boss of everybody there at the same time. For this reason, we have CAs that are assigned to Cook Shed all week. Those CAs will be your point of contact if you have questions. Our Cook Shed lead is going to be overseeing, 40, 50 people. So if you could touch base with the Cook Shed CAs before you talk to Cook Shed lead, that would be the easiest to keep things flowing. Now, different grade levels do different things. Depending on the unit level that you're in, be prepared for different things, including cooking over an open fire or charcoal. We have things like camp stoves and Dutch ovens. We are actively asking our older kids to work with sharp knives and cutting and preparing things. One thing that you will not see is raw meat. That is a food safety issue for outdoors, but you will see a lot of cutting, preparing, opening cans, using matches, things of that nature. So be prepared for that. Also be prepared for the kid boss in your unit. The Cook Shed lead adult volunteer will give instructions and say, here are your materials. Here's what I'm asking you to do. Now you as a unit figure it out. And you as an adult volunteer and your CA will really need to make sure that your unit actually works together and you don't allow one or two of the kids from the unit to kind of take over. It should be equal sharing. It should be equal splitting of duties. It should be taking turns. It should be listening and participating together. So it is our policy to say that unless it's an allergy or a dietary matter or concern like vegan, gluten-free, lactose intolerant, etc., the food that the unit produces or that the group produces will not be altered in any way. We will not eliminate anything based on taste preferences, only based on need. And at Cook Shed, we say, unless it's an allergy, we are going to ask, not force, but ask that camper to try the food once it's prepared. Just give it one bite, give it one try. This is something you made together. This is something that has a very small portion of whatever it is that you don't like, but everything else in it you may like. So please give it one try. We're not going to force, we're not going to convince, we're not going to cajole or bribe. We are going to tell them we try new things, we attempt, and we have a good time trying something new. Campers, CAs, and adult volunteers are expected to use this opportunity to eat lunch together. They also clean up together. That includes everybody cleaning up their own dishes and everything that was used to prepare the food at camp. And nobody's done until everybody's done. So please do not allow your campers or even remind the CAs that there should not be 2 kids still washing dishes and everybody else is sitting down at the edge of the forest shelter doing GIMP. That's not the Girl Scout way. You will also be asked to wash your hands actively. We have a special hand washing form that we do at Cook Shed. So please make sure that you are actively listening to our Cook Shed lead, our Cook Shed CAs, and making sure that the kiddos are safe, are participating, and are actively engaged in all parts and pieces of their Cook Shed day.
This is your super quick guide to take-along crafts. Take-along crafts are meant to be done between activities. So if you have some extra time because half your group is finished early and the other half isn't ready to leave the activity yet, or you have a unit time, or you happen to show up at an activity earlier than expected and they're not quite ready for you, take-along crafts is your time filler. You'll find straw weaving supplies in each of the unit bins. Units 1 through 3 should begin with straw weaving and complete at least 2 inches of straw weaving prior to moving on to the next level, which is friendship bracelets or God's eyes. Units 4 and 5 can begin with friendship bracelets or God's eyes, provided that they've done straw weaving in a prior year of camp. Units 6 and 7 also will have straw weaving supplies in their unit bin, but they can begin with a 4-string GIMP, provided that they've done friendship bracelets or God's eyes in a prior year of camp. Campers need to finish their take-along activity before they move on to the next one. So they cannot show up and grab 5 different 4-string GIMP starts. You can bring your campers by take-along crafts to pick up more supplies when there's nobody else there. Every unit will be assigned a time to go to take-along crafts in the first couple days, depending on the age of your unit. So if you happen to be passing by on your way to Cook Shed, that sort of thing, and there is nobody else there, then feel free to pick up some take-alongs.
Let's talk about Elfanora. Elfanora is our camp elf. Elfanora loves Camp Wil-LO-Linn, and Wil-LO-Linn happens to take place every year during Elfanora's birthday. And because it is her birthday, she shows up at camp and loves to watch our kiddos at Camp Wil-LO-Linn because she loves to see how our Girl Scouts take care of the forest and each other at camp. So a couple things about Elfanora. We can write Elfanora notes. You will find the special Elfanora stationery in your unit binder. Now, if we write Elfanora a note and put it in the special Elfanora mailbox that you find just outside the boundary toward the forest trail where the porta potties are behind the river shelter, Elfanora will write you back. And the note will show up the very next day, written to the kid that wrote them and answer all their questions. The other cool thing that Elfanora does for us, just to kind of prove that she's watching and participating with us without actually showing herself, is she leaves her toys around, especially on the forest trail, because that's where she's most comfortable. You might find a little trail of glitter leading to a toy of Elfanora's with her initial underneath it to mark it as hers. And if your camper picks up that toy and returns it to Elfanora's mailbox, they can get themselves a special Elfanora helper ribbon. The little ones especially love Elfanora to write their note, to find the toys, to color and everything Elfanora. It's adorable. Now, Elfanora also loves to hear about how awesome our campers and our CAs and our adult volunteers are. So you will find special Elfanora stationery also in the unit binder, and you can make some Elfanora recognitions for our campers, our volunteers, or for our CAs, and we will read those out loud at the end of the day for Elfanora to hear, and as well as the rest of the camp, and that person will get a special clap and a special thank you for being an awesome Elfanora helper. Elfanora is only in the forest the week of camp, so you will not find her toys or the glitter or the evidence of her being there except at camp. She is that special to Camp Wil-LO-Linn. The first day of camp, as an all-day, all-week adult volunteer, your first day may look a little intimidating, but remember that you're there to help your CA. Your CA is in charge. You are there to assist. But you as an adult volunteer, it's nice to have a little idea of what it's going to look like. So you're going to show up to camp, you're going to park in the far parking lot, and you're going to back in, and then you're going to come down to camp, and you're going to show up to HQ by 8:15, please. We would like you on site, at the site, by 8:15, not parking at 8:15, not walking down at 8:15. And the reason we do that is because it gives us a chance to really make sure everybody is there, nobody's sick. We can double check that everything is ready to rock. Because by 8:30 we have our leader meeting, and once that leader meeting happens, it's go, go, go until 3 p.m. So 8:15 is really important to have you on site. So 8:15, be on site. 8:30 is our leader meeting. That includes adults and CAs. We'll run through what the day looks like. We'll answer any questions, help anybody out that needs it. And then once that's done, which should be maybe about 10 minutes, you're going to go check in your camper or your boy or your tag along to their unit. The check-in and check-out process is going to be a little bit different in 2024 than it has been in the past. Based on CA and parent feedback, we have noticed the check-in system has been a little bit chaotic. So we are going to switch it up this year and see if it works better. We are going to have our adult volunteers all line up in unit order at the top of the hill right by where the bus drop-off usually is. And we are going to have them there with their check-in clipboards ready to go to meet our families and our campers. When the adult and their camper walks up, we still expect the camper to introduce their parent to the adult unit leader. The adult will then initial their name on the Monday roster, and then the child will then be dismissed to singing tree. Once the check-in process has happened, and like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is going to be really efficient because we'll have the process down, but Monday will be a little bit longer. The kids will be hanging out at Singing Tree. You and your CA will be communicating and figuring stuff out a little bit. And then the CAs will release the kids from Singing Tree back to the units. They'll come charging towards you all excited and happy and sit around you like little ducklings, and you'll make your introductions. Your CA will introduce themselves. You'll introduce yourself, and you'll get to know the kids, face to a name kind of thing. And while that's happening, in your unit box, you will find your wood cookies for the kids to make their name tags and their t-shirts. So there's going to be a little bit of a mad dash while the kids, put their t-shirt over and take their t-shirt off from underneath and put it in their backpack and all that kind of stuff while they're decorating their wood cookies. Some kids may have wood cookies and or incentive pins from last year. Totally awesome. We love it. If they want a new one, fine. We roll with it. They can have a new one. They can transfer their beads and their pins or whatever to the new one. However it works, you and your CA and the campers can figure it out. We trust you. Probably get the question of, how do I get a hoodie? We usually only order what is ordered ahead of time. We don't really keep extras, but inevitably we'll end up having an extra or two. So if at the end of the day, kiddo or parent is really, really excited to get a hoodie, you can always send them to headquarters and see if we have extras. Now, if you have your schedule in front of you at that time, which I think would be a really great idea, you'll notice a couple different things. One, that there's a lot of stuff to cover that first morning to kind of orient the kids and get you guys kind of all on the same page. You'll also notice that some of our adult volunteers or our CAs may be kind of wandering over toward leather to make their name tags. It should take about 15 to 20 minutes. So if your CA or you need to make your leather name tag, work it out with them, see what you can do according to the schedule at a certain time, or you can excuse or ask another adult to come over from headquarters. However you want to work it again. We trust you, we trust the CA and you to figure it out. Sometime in that first morning, there's a lot of stuff to kind of go over with the kids, bead incentives and behavior expectations according to the Girl Scout law. And that includes things like safety, boundaries, rules for behavior, not just expectations, but actual rules. You pick up the mess you make. We don't leave things behind for other people. Keep your stuff with you, etc., etc. You can go over the schedule with them. You can show it to them. You want to cover how the fire drill works. The kids are going to know how it rolls. They have to keep track of their own stuff, etc., etc. Monday, you can kind of tell the kids, hey, you can help pick the theme for next year. Maybe get them talking about it while they're working on an in-unit service activity. And then we turn those ideas in by Monday afternoon by 3 p.m. Now, if you have any problems that first day, talk to your CA. Your CA will know how this goes. Your CA will have had experience usually at camp, either as a camper or a CA in the past. But if you really get stuck, just come to headquarters and we usually will have an answer for you. And if we don't, we'll find you one. Sometimes during the day, you'll see somebody from headquarters come up with a post-it or a note or a something to tell you. Sometimes it's going to be a change in pickup. Sometimes it's going to be an issue or a note. If you can't figure it out, just come to HQ. We will help you figure it out. That's what we're there for. We want to make sure that you and the kids and the CAs have really the best time. Camp is so special. Camp is so exciting and fun. We want everyone to come back every year and really learn and develop all of these skills as both a Girl Scout and a wonderful human being, and these rainbow skills that we're learning at camp, all these outdoor skills. So they really appreciate being outside and doing things that are adventurous and fun and exciting. And all that starts at camp. Another tradition we have at Camp Wil-Lo-Linn are our bead traditions. Your bead bag that has your colored beads in it, you will find in your unit bin, and I would ask that you keep that little bag with you. It will have lots of the different colors beads in there, and not let any of the campers have it or borrow it, because we want you to be catching the kids doing good and handing out those beads throughout the week. Maybe just keep them in a pocket. At the end of the day, we'll just put them back in the unit bin and then pick it up the next day, and that's fine. If you run out of a color, come to headquarters. We have lots of beads. The main one we have is our rainbow bead incentive chart that follows the Girl Scout law. You notice that each color corresponds to a line of the Girl Scout law, and we do recite the Girl Scout law and promise every day. And so this is our way of reinforcing the behaviors that we want to see. It's a way of catching kids doing good, because it's more motivating than to lecture them about something that they did wrong. So each color is something that they can earn every day, every hour, every minute, but the expectation is not that they do earn every single color. We're not giving out beads willy-nilly. We want it to really be meaningful, thoughtful. We want to be able to really tie a behavior to the earning of a bead. So we don't just hand everybody a blue bead in the unit when they were kind to each other. We want it to be individualized, we want it to be specific, and we want it to be somewhat public so that the kids really see and connect the behavior to the earning and to the law itself. So you may have some kids who are just really shy and really quiet and never really speak out, and they may earn that yellow bead by putting in their 2 cents for the first time. That to them is courageous and strong. And for another kid, it may be resisting doing something for someone else that they see that they're struggling with, it they just want to take over and do. And for that kid, being courageous and strong is allowing that kid to struggle and learn and not take over. So it is individualized. It's not a group thing. Any adult or any CA can hand out beads. So your kids may be earning beads at activities. Maybe somebody picks up trash. Hopefully an adult is going to see that and say, that is so awesome. I love that you are respecting yourself and others, or using resources wisely, or making the world a better place, whatever it is that they want to tie it to. The other beads that we have are water beads. We hand out these beads and they put them on a little pin that they can either hang from their rainbow pin, or that they can put on their shirt or something else, maybe on their wood cookie necklace, however they want to do it. The water beads are for when it's really hot. We hand out the glow-in-the-dark water beads every time they finish a water bottle, because we want the kids to stay hydrated. We will let you know if and when it's appropriate to do the water beads, because if it's rainy and awful and gross, we're not going to worry so much about it. And on those hot days, we will have lemonade and have ice that they can put in their water bottles, and sometimes handkerchiefs that we can dip in cold water, all those kinds of things. But water beads are going to be the name of the game that day, because we really, really, really want them to stay hydrated, and we want to motivate them to stay hydrated. We're just going to do a quick thing about campfire and overnight. It's something you probably will get asked about if you have 4th grade units or above. You probably hear it being talked about too. Campfire and overnight is a choice of something that the kids can do. Nobody has to do it, but it is an opportunity for kids to exert a little bit of independence. Campfire is for 4th graders and up. Overnight is available to 5th graders and up, including our PATEs, our CAs, and our adults if they wish to stay. Campfire is kind of a late night. It's the kiddos get to stay. We do a bunch of activities, games. We retire a flag. We have a good time. It's really fun. The fourth graders will be asked to leave at 10 p.m. Their adult camper checkout will come and check them out just like how we normally do with our rosters. Now the fifth graders, if they want to, can stay and sleep in a tent or even sleep under the stars in the field. It's a special thing. We encourage our older campers to kind of give this a try, especially if they've never done any kind of overnight camp before, either at one of the properties or if they haven't done outdoor school or anything like that. It's just an opportunity for some independence. And most of the stuff ends at 10 p.m. anyway. After then, it's getting ready for bed and they sit and chit-chat in their tents or whatever. The cost for Campfire and overnight is $20. It's non-refundable. They can either pay online, or if they didn't get a chance to pay online, they can bring cash, send them to headquarters. Overnight is kids organizing themselves in a lot of ways. Once the parents have given permission, once the kids kind of know what's happening, and they will start arranging themselves and who's going to share tents, who's going to stick next to each other, who's going to hang out together. We do not manage that. They manage that. Again, it's an opportunity for them to show some leadership. You're going to have somebody who forgets a second pair of socks, whatever. It's an opportunity to learn. It's okay. We have to kind of let that happen organically, and it can be very difficult. Overnight is extremely safe. We have adults all around. We kind of surround the kids with our tents and everything, and the kids are in the center of the circle. We also have hourly police patrols. The park is locked after 10 p.m. after all our Campfire kiddos are picked up. The bathrooms stay open. We leave the lights on. We have all kinds of lights available so the kids know how to get to the bathroom and back again. We also have an adult awake at all times, as well as a first aider. So if they have any questions, problems, worry, they want to call someone, their phone dies, they know that they have someone that they can go to. We will talk more about Campfire and overnight in the older kids unit the first few days of camp, and you'll see a lot of movement. You'll see a lot of kids say yes, no, yes, no. We will constantly be updating those lists. The Campfire and overnight is Thursday night to Friday morning. If anybody has questions about Campfire and overnight in your unit, send them up to headquarters if you can't answer those questions, or if your CA can't answer those questions. We'll have all the lists. We'll have who's paid, who's not paid, who has permission, who hasn't gotten them back to us yet, all that at headquarters. If you as a unit adult are looking at your unit schedule, you might notice that there's something in there where the PATEs come by and teach. We do this to give the PATEs an opportunity to learn how to lead through the week as they're doing their training. So you might see on the schedule, especially on Friday, that your CA will be stepping away and this new person, this PATE, will be stepping in to lead. Now you as an adult will still be there. You will still be there to help out, to know all the background about the kids and etc. But this PATE will be considered the CA during that time, even though they're in training. On Friday especially, this happens for a significant length of time while the CAs all go to their thank you lunch that is provided them by the camp. So on Friday especially, you should talk to the kids, prepare them that they're going to be having a guest, and they should be considering that guest or that PATE as the CA of the group during that time period. They need to treat them with the same respect that they treat their unit CA.
The first thing you'll need to know about Camp Wil-Lo-Linn schedule is that your activities do not need to take the entire time that is booked. If a unit is scheduled for an hour and the campers complete the activity in 30 or 40 minutes, that is totally fine. Take that unit on a bathroom break. Take them back to the tarp for a snack break. Just make sure they don't eat their entire lunch if it's not lunchtime. They can work on take-along crafts. Activities should not take the entire hour because the last 10 minutes of each scheduled block is meant to be travel time. Schedule items that are listed in italics on the schedule are merely suggestions based on having done it in the past and what units tend to do with that free time. Younger units are going to have more downtime and shorter activities, while the older units have less downtime and longer activities. It's different depending on what type of unit you're in. If your schedule says you're to meet with another unit to teach or learn something, you and that other unit can decide where to meet in the field. Again, you do not need to take the entire block of time to teach or learn what is scheduled. If your schedule says unit CAs in bold, it's up to your unit CA to teach that item. You don't have to go anywhere. You're learning it within your unit at your TARP. Sometimes a floating CA will be available to help, but we can't guarantee that. Downtime can be filled with slingshots, axe throwing when it's not assigned to a unit, take-along crafts, reviewing knots, or finishing up macrame.
Don't forget that we have a lot of in-unit service activity possibilities for you to kind of look at or do with the kids. With smaller ones, doing something like the Meal on Wheels placemats where they just decorate it, write something cute, put a smiley face, flowers, something. We also have fleece that they can braid for the Humane Society and Meow Village for the dogs and the cats. Those kinds of service activities can happen in unit during downtime if they just need a break or they just want to color. Those opportunities are also available to them. The fleece is available at headquarters, and the Meals on Wheels placemats is just the blank white paper that is in the unit binders, and it will have instructions on it right in front of it so you know exactly what to do and where to turn it in.
If an extra adult is available, check in at HQ, and then you can sign your troop out and go through a hike through the forest. Don't forget, there's also brainstorming the camp theme, working on patch designs, or using the supplies in your unit bin for drawing or coloring as appropriate. Your schedule will not be perfect. The schedule is a puzzle with different activities for each grade level. Each activity and grade level having specific needs, such as must go to knife safety prior to going to cooking. So some activities are super squeezed into their time slot. And if archery is on your schedule, account for the extra time it takes to pick up your bonus adult and walk there, just like if you were going to cook shed. Be on time for your activities, but finishing an activity early is fine. Stop for a bathroom break when you need it. And if you have questions, please ask.